A2000 EST OCOEE. They say if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. They say my time's wasted if I ain't.
Hey everyone, what is up? It's time to be back again with yet another stream. And actually, I don't know why I have music running. Because this is literally basically just going to be the stream equivalent of just one video. This is probably going to end up being a video on the Nanobi Highlights channel unless like the sky falls apart and I stream tomorrow to talk about it or something. But the crazy news that man, I don't think any of us expected this to happen, or at least I don't think anyone expected this to happen with the amount of success that we ended up getting. So we all know, all of the craziness, right, with Kevin McCarthy, how he ended up, the first time around when he was trying to be the Speaker of the House, it took like 15 votes for him to, get, the amount of votes that he needed, to get the support that he needed in order to become the Speaker of the House. Which I think, honestly, it was awful. Like the third time he should have given up, honestly. When you have such low support among your own party, it's hard to lead your party well. And, that ended up being the case. Nobody really likes Kevin McCarthy anymore, at least, a lot of conservatives don't really like Kevin McCarthy anymore. A lot of Republicans do, and that's something that I'm actually going to get to in today's stream. Now, I wasn't going to stream because I ended up getting caught up in some things, and I wasn't able to stream in my normal time. But after seeing some of the right-wing coverage of this event, I feel like it is important to kind of talk about and sort of like expose why you might be hearing certain things from very well-known, very prominent right-wing hosts, whether that be on talk radio, whether that be on the internet, whether that even be from, members of Congress. So I really did want to go ahead and dive into this, just because I do think that this is important. But first of all, I think it is only fair to kind of give both sides of things. I completely do not agree with, the people saying that we should keep in Kevin McCarthy because he's good enough. Let's settle for mediocrity. I'm not a fan of that perspective. That's one thing I didn't like about the Barbie movie. That's one of its messages. But anyways, here we have a couple of exchanges that I think pretty well encapsulate a lot of the opposition to Matt Gaetz's move to get McCarthy ousted, and then McCarthy's responses to both of these claims.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every step of the way, Speaker McCarthy has been doubted. After the first Speaker vote, he was mocked, right? And after 15, they called him Speaker. And even then, it was the media and the left that mocked him. With the narrowest Republican majority in a generation, what did we achieve? We brought the president to the table when he stubbornly said for 100 days they would not negotiate on the debt ceiling. I took him at his word. The Speaker said, no, we'll get him to the table. And sure enough, we did. The result? The most conservative spending package we've seen in generations, the largest spending cuts year over year that any Congress has passed. Conservative outcomes. So I understand your position on the left. I understand that. But my friends on the right, why? And then this past weekend, so I understand the frustration on the left at what happened on the continuing resolution. But why would we have conservatives object to that? Why will we have House members object to that? We rolled the Senate. We never roll the Senate as a House. Moreover, we never roll the Senate to get less spending, and we got it this weekend. So I understand why the left is mad. What I don't understand is why some Republicans think that that's a bad thing. The frustration for me today, I understand where the liberals are. I know you can support the constitutional order, except in a moment like this when you are questioned on that. I understand that. You can't be counted on in a moment like this with the state of the speakership. But for Republicans, why will we give up a conservative working majority for better outcomes and hand the keys over to the Democrats? Why would we do that? And furthermore, with this record of success that we've seen Kevin McCarthy and a Republican majority produce in a Washington run by Democrats, we're going to throw that away, resulting in more liberal outcomes, not more conservative ones. So I understand why the left is where you are today.
I don't know why he thinks that there will be liberal outcomes, because no one is saying that we should have a more left-wing Speaker of the House than Kevin McCarthy. So that I don't know that Matt Gaetz responded to, but I don't understand why he's saying that here.
Conservative ones. So I understand why the left is where you are today. You don't like an effective conservative majority, and I don't blame you. But on the right,
Gentleman's time has
rethink
expired.
this.
Gentleman from Florida.
It is lovely to hear from the principal architect of Mr. McCarthy's debt limit deal, but here's the reality. The only Republicans in America who believe that the debt limit deal was conservative are in this chamber right now. Because all over America, Republicans think that when you negotiated that debt limit deal, they took your lunch money. I reserve.
That's very true. Now, here we also have probably what's the most famous exchange, which is when Garrett Graves, many people saw it as a call out, but he criticized Matt Gaetz for asking for fundraising after this move to oust Kevin McCarthy.
My very good friend from the great state of Louisiana, Mr. Graves.
Gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Graves, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the gentleman from Oklahoma for yielding. Mr. Speaker, we've been here for 8 months with one of the tightest majorities in modern history. Yet look at the accomplishments of this majority, this conservative majority, with the majority of Republicans voting for the strongest border security in my lifetime, fighting against this incomprehensible energy policy that's driving up energy costs 40%, utility and gasoline payments, pushing Americans into energy poverty. We passed legislation to unleash America's energy resources, pushing back this administration's brainless policies on energy. We've passed legislation to pull back, to stop spending $4.8 trillion. Then I want to make note, my friends that are carrying this motion to vacate opposed. We've passed legislation to streamline regulations, permitting, environmental laws for the first time in 40 years. Again, my friends here opposed. We strengthened work requirements for welfare to get people back into the workforce. Again, my friends over here opposed. I keep wondering, what is going on? Are we redefining what conservative is? What's going on in this country today? What's going on in this body? Where you have Freedom Works, Heritage, Chip Roy, and Jim Jordan say something's conservative, and these folks say it's not, and they're right. And all of a sudden, my phone keeps sending text messages. Text messages saying, hey, give me money. Oh, look at that. Oh, look, give me money. I filed the motion to vacate. Using official actions to raise money. It's disgusting. It's what's disgusting about Washington.
So,
Mr. Speaker.
So here he very clearly is, accusing Matt Gaetz of literally only doing this because he wants money, because he wants to raise money and be richer, right? Because of course, by ousting Kevin McCarthy, that's the only way that you can, get more money and do fundraising for future campaigns. Well, this right here is Matt Gaetz's perfect response to this accusation by Garrett Graves.
The gentleman from Florida.
My colleague says we've passed the strongest border bills in history. Well, guess what? Look at the border right now. We didn't use sufficient leverage in the debt limit or in any other thing to actually get results on the border. The border is a disaster, really something I don't think you're going to be campaigning on, that you fixed the border. Second.
It is a good point that Matt Gaetz makes there, which I think is actually one of my favorite things, about his statement here is that these Republicans in this chamber, they're going to be saying, oh, look at how great we were. Look at all of the gains that we made when Kevin McCarthy was Speaker of the House. If they went to their own constituents and bragged and boasted about these itty bitty things that they did here and there, meanwhile, Kevin McCarthy, the whole time was breaking his commitments that he made when he first accepted the job, not a lot of voters would buy that. So I do like the fact that he pointed that out, because it can be really easy to look at the news and see a clip of some politician being like, oh yes, this is so great. You know, Kevin McCarthy is one of the greatest speakers of the House in United States history, and then hearing, like, 80 or 90, GOP SEALs, clapping their hands, yay, woo, and then think that means that the majority of Republicans across the country also think that it's a good idea. No, it's not the case.
You fixed the border. Second, you said you streamlined regulations. What the gentleman from Louisiana doesn't tell you is that all of the regulatory reform he was just bragging about is waivable by the stroke of a pen of someone in the Biden White House. Do you really think you got anything for that? It's a total joke. And then finally, the welfare to work that the gentleman from Louisiana said we got. The welfare programs that they said that they streamlined with their welfare to work stuff, they're actually going to grow, because while they did work requirements, they blew out those programs with expanded eligibility. I'm real glad you guys didn't put work requirements on Medicaid. It probably would have resulted in Medicaid expansion. And when it comes to how those raise money, I take no lecture on asking patriotic Americans to weigh in and contribute to this fight from those who would grovel and bend knee for the lobbyists and special interests who own our leadership, who have, oh, boo all you want, who have hollowed out this town and have borrowed against the future of our future generations. I'll be happy to fund my political operation through the work of hardworking Americans, $10 and $20 and $30 at a time, and you all keep showing up at the lobbyist fundraisers and see how that goes for you. I reserve.
Hey, that's a really good point, right? Because honestly, like, what business do you have being like, oh, how dare you send out emails for fundraising? As if that's worse than taking money from lobbyists, taking money from special interests who have their own agendas, and because they're far richer, it's a lot easier for them to control someone in politics. That's why we see a lot of people in politics voting and moving and behaving in the ways that they do. So that was kind of a booyah, gotcha moment there. But to be entirely fair, all of this stuff is completely irrelevant if Kevin McCarthy did in fact follow all of the promises that he gave, all of the commitments that he gave. Because at the end of the day, the only reason why he was Speaker of the House in the first place is because he made certain concessions with the Freedom Caucus. Well, let's take a look here, and I know this is from the Washington Post, but these are the promises that conservatives say that Kevin McCarthy broke. So let's scroll down here. Budget baseline. He promised when he was running for speaker that he would use the 2022 baseline numbers as the appropriation numbers for this year, and then went back on that promise with this particular legislation where he promised and signed into law the 2023 numbers. Ken Buck said on Sunday, which as far as I know, is true. Also, not allowing a bill to pass with the support of more Democrats than Republicans. We were told they never put a bill on the floor that would take more Democrats than Republicans to pass. We were told that. Andy Biggs said this. As far as I understand it, this is also true. We also have, Chip Roy saying that during the speaker negotiations to build the coalition, it was explicit that nothing would pass the Rules Committee without at least 7 GOP votes, and that the committee would not allow reporting out rules without unanimous Republican votes. As far as I know, that is also true. Now, it says here, McCarthy has denied making the latter two promises, but hasn't commented on the first. Now, I do think it's funny. I did hear that McCarthy was saying, oh, no, I didn't promise that. When people who were in the meetings literally said that he promised that. So I guess that may further tank his credibility. And I think that, honestly, it's going back on his word that has cost him this seat, not anything that he did. If Kevin McCarthy had done everything that he had done, but he didn't need to make any concessions in order to take those actions, I don't think that he would be in this mess. I think that he would probably still be in his seat, and people would have just kept things chugging along as usual. But it's not just that, right? Ken Buck also, actually, hold on, let me see here. But anyways, so those are the major things. Those are the major things. Now, right after this, the guy who so forcefully at the beginning was speaking in favor of Kevin McCarthy what's his name? Patrick McHenry. He kicked out Nancy Pelosi from her cushy hideaway office so that he could use it for himself, according to Insider here. And now people are like, oh yeah, that's a big dunk. That's awesome. Booyah. Like, come on. We are in a situation where we need a new house. We need a new Speaker of the House before any new bills are passed. Now people are acting like this is going to delay business in the House. This is not going to delay business in the House because there was already scheduled a 1 week long recess, spanning this week and then kind of ending next week. And this is in spite of the fact, by the way, that the House only has like 45 days to come up with a full government spending bill, right? To come up with a plan to fully fund the government. So take that into account when all these people are whining and complaining about how this is going to prevent them from funding the government when they themselves have decided that they're just not going to do anything for a week. They're just going to sit back at home and watch some college football, which I don't blame you. Like, the stuff that's going on with Deion Sanders is extremely interesting and exciting. But nonetheless, they themselves are going to spend a week doing nothing and then blame Matt Gaetz for them not getting anything done, which I think is kind of hilarious. It's funny. But another thing too is it's important too to take a step back, right, and consider, no matter which side of this issue you're on, right? If you're a Republican, I'm presuming if you're watching this, you're a Republican. Did your representative vote the way that you wanted them to? Because I think things like this should serve as litmus tests moving forward when it comes to the next primaries. Because, look, I've talked about this in my last stream. I had a big, massive rant about this. If the person that you're voting for is not doing what you want them to do, vote them out and pick somebody better. Don't just vote for the incumbent just because they have, the right team jersey on, right? Because they're wearing like a red shirt or a blue shirt. That's not how you should be picking, the people who are going to represent you. Pick people to represent you who, actually represent you. So I do want to go through this list real quick of all of the people who voted in favor of ousting McCarthy, because that list is a lot shorter than the people who voted against. We have Andy Biggs from Arizona. We have Ken Buck from Colorado. We have Tim Burchett from Tennessee. We have Eli Crane from Arizona. We have Matt Gaetz from Florida. We have Bob Good from Virginia. We have Nancy Mace from South Carolina. And we have Matt Rosendale from Montana. Now, a lot of the things that I've said here are probably not going to be news to you, right? You guys probably know a good chunk of the information that I've already shared. But I think that what is almost worse than, some of the the rhinos and the moderates in Congress kind of like going against Matt Gaetz for this is some of the talking heads that we see, like on talk radio and whatever, saying that, challenging the Speaker of the House because he didn't, commit to his promise of switching to individual spending bills on individual line items to determine what it is exactly that we want to fund, rather than saying, we either have to fund all the government or fund none of it, right? Which is ridiculous, right? Because you're handcuffing people and forcing them to vote for some things that they really don't want to fund, but and you're forcing them to pick between that or not funding the government at all, and not being able to fund many things in the government that they do want to fund. It's a very, very, very dirty game that Congress has sort of been stuck in. And as Matt Gaetz has said, he's trying to break the fever, and hopefully he's successful in doing this. But I just want to play for you some clips of some very mainstream people, or at least very popular right-wing conservative pundits who have been publicly lambasting and opposing Matt Gaetz for his moves to sort of bring Congress into a smaller government and a more functional way of behaving and moving forward without these dirty tricks that end up getting all these big bills, these big spending bills passed, where people don't even have time to read what's in these bills. Here is a clip from one of the recent episodes of the Mark Levin show that aired a few days ago, where he goes after Matt Gaetz for this very thing.
I looked at the list of House Freedom Caucus members, the most conservative members in the House of Representatives. They had to create their own caucus. And I want to go down this list with you. There's only about 52 of them. And how they voted. Barry Moore, Alabama, 2nd District. Voted to keep McCarthy. Gary Palmer, Alabama, 6th District. Voted to keep McCarthy. David Schweikert, the real conservative out of Arizona, Arizona 1. He voted to keep McCarthy. Eli Crane, Arizona 2, voted against him. Andy Biggs, Mr. Anti-Convention of States, voted against McCarthy. Debbie Lesko, Arizona 8, voted for McCarthy. Paul Gosar, Arizona 9, voted for McCarthy. Darrell Issa, California 48. They're Freedom Caucus members. Voted for McCarthy. Lauren Boebert, Colorado 3rd. Voted for McCarthy. Ken Buck, who we now know is best buddies with Liz Cheney, for God's sakes, who hates Kevin McCarthy. Well, he did as he was directed, apparently. He voted against McCarthy. Matt Gaetz, you know well.
Yes, we do.
Kamek, Florida's 3rd. Voted for McCarthy. Bill Posey, Florida 8. Voted for McCarthy. Anna Luna, I think she just had a baby. She wasn't there. Greg Stubbe, Florida 17th. Voted for McCarthy. And most of these, by the way, are Trump supporters. Byron Donalds, Florida 19. Voted for McCarthy. Andrew Clyde, Georgia 9. Voted for McCarthy. These are Freedom Caucus members. Mike Collins, Georgia 10. Voted for McCarthy. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Georgia 14. Voted for McCarthy. Russ Fulcher, Idaho 1. Voted for McCarthy. Mary Miller, Illinois 15. Very delightful lady. My wife and I met her and her husband. Voted for McCarthy. Clay Higgins, Louisiana 3rd. Voted for McCarthy. Mike Johnson, Louisiana 4. Voted for McCarthy. Andy Harris, Maryland 1. Voted for McCarthy. Eric Burleson, Missouri 7. Voted for McCarthy. Matt Rosendale, Montana 2nd, has voted against McCarthy and everything else every step of the way. Greg Murphy, North Carolina 3rd. Voted for McCarthy. Dan Bishop, I had a little Twitter back and forth. Voted for McCarthy. Jim Jordan spoke on his behalf and voted for McCarthy, Ohio 4. Max Miller used to work for Trump, Ohio 7, voted for McCarthy. Warren Davidson, Ohio 8, voted for McCarthy. What else do we have here? Hold on one second, folks. Getting my list straight. All right.
Get it together, man. All right.
Here we go. Josh Breachin, Oklahoma 2nd. Voted for McCarthy. Scott Perry, good man out of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania 10th, voted for McCarthy. Jeff Duncan, South Carolina 3rd. Voted for McCarthy. Ralph Norman, South Carolina 5th. Voted for McCarthy. Diana Harshbarger, Tennessee 1st. Voted for McCarthy. Scott Disgelis, Tennessee 4th. Voted for McCarthy. Andy Ogles, Tennessee 5th. Voted for McCarthy. Keith Self, Texas 3rd. Voted for McCarthy. Ronnie Jackson of Texas, President Trump's former doctor. Texas 13, voted for McCarthy. Randy Weber, Texas 14, voted for McCarthy. Chip Roy, Texas 21, voted for McCarthy. Troy Nels, Texas 22nd, voted for McCarthy. Michael Cloud, Texas 27, voted for McCarthy. Burgess Owens, Utah 4th, voted for McCarthy. Bob Good, Virginia 5th, voted against McCarthy. Ben Klein, Virginia 6th, voted for McCarthy. Morgan Griffith, Virginia 9th, voted for McCarthy. Alex Mooney, West Virginia 2nd, great guy, by the way, voted for McCarthy. Tom Tiffany, Wisconsin 7, voted for McCarthy. Harriet Hageman, who replaced Liz Cheney. Wyoming, at large, voted for McCarthy. She replaced Liz Cheney, who urged Mr. Buck, one of the 8, to vote against McCarthy. I just went through the list of the Freedom Caucus.
Now, his main point with this clip is to basically say that, oh, well, McCarthy couldn't have been that bad because the majority of the Freedom Caucus supported him. Which, to me, is like a really bad argument, because just because a lot of people like someone doesn't mean that that person's good. Just because a lot of Republicans liked Kevin McCarthy, that didn't mean that, he was a good Speaker of the House. Or it doesn't even negate the fact that he broke, or at least according to many people in the Freedom Caucus, or at least a handful, doesn't negate the fact that he broke promises that he made, and it doesn't negate the fact that he is doing his best to avoid, acting in accordance to the concession that he made, in which you're supposed to vote for things individually, which I think is like one of the biggest issues here, because these people should not be forced to support, training surgeries in the military, fund those, and sign a bill off that goes ahead and does that, in the same bill that says, hey, let's send money to go fund the people who are down there to defend our border. It's a very, 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 it's a very, very messed up system, the way that we're doing things now. Matt Gaetz is trying to change that, and this change is what is being opposed here. Don't make any mistake about that. But he also has another point that I think is pretty bad that I'm going to play here as well.
I guess they're all neocons, rhinos, sellouts, big government leftists too.
They're not all. They could be sellouts. Many of them could be. And they're not leftists, but many of them are indeed big government. And that's actually one of my major gripes with the Republican Party right now, is that it is extremely uncomfortable being a small government conservative in a party full of big government conservatives, right? These aren't liberals, right? Also, don't make that mistake. They're not liberals, but they're big government conservatives. And Matt Gaetz is a small government conservative, which is why, of course, he's opposing the big government conservatives, because he's not a big fan of big government. He's not a big fan of lots of spending. He's not a big fan of national debt. And hopefully, most of you guys aren't either.
No, these people are conservatives who understand everything that's at stake now. The existential threats all around us. Where do you think Hakeem Jeffries is today? Think he's having a party? Now, the one question Matt Gaetz has not been asked is, when is the last time he spoke to Hakeem Jeffries or any of his surrogates or any of the others in the Democrat Party? Because it's interesting, Hakeem Jeffries puts out a note this morning and tells all the Democrats to vote against McCarthy, when he said it was a Republican civil war and stay out of it. I wasn't born yesterday. I didn't fall off the turnip truck, and neither did you. You're intelligent people. You're wise people. You know what the hell's going on, too. They made a deal with the devil in the Democrat Party. They made a deal with a party who has been and is destroying this country, because they're trying to settle a score. Some of them are wanting to run for a higher office, and they think this is what's going to propel them.
And, I don't know how true that is. I don't know if Matt Gaetz is trying to run for higher office or whatever. But I mean, the idea that this is bad, people are acting as if the sky is crumbling, or as if these people all voted in support of, like, I don't know, AOC as being Speaker of the House. These statements only make sense if Matt Gaetz was like, I want Hakeem Jeffries to be the Speaker of the House, right? That's the only way that this sort of criticism makes sense. Oh, we understand what's at stake here. Like, like, it's not like they're trying to make the Congress be more left-wing. They're trying to make it be more conservative, more in line with small government values. And Mark Levin asked, you know, what about Kevin McCarthy, right? What about Hakeem Jeffries? Not Hakeem Jeffries, but, like, has anyone asked, you know, when Matt Gaetz last talked to Hakeem Jeffries? Has anyone asked him that? Well, you know what's rather interesting, because your buddy here, your BFF, your best friend forever, Kevin McCarthy, told us exactly when he last talked to Hakeem Jeffries. Let's roll the tape here on this one.
What was your conversation like with Mr. Jeffries? Why did you call him?
Well, I have to talk to Jeffries about a lot of things. We talk every week. We talk sometimes during the week. We've got some issues going on. The Bowman. I always try to let him know what's going to be coming to the floor and others. My only conversation with Jeffries, I got a lot of respect for him. You know, you guys do whatever you need to do. I get politics. I understand where people are. I truly believe, though, the institution of the House. At the end of the day, if you throw a speaker out that has 99% of their conference, that kept government open and paid the troops, I think we're in a really bad place for how we're going to run Congress.
So let me get this straight, right? Mark Levin is going to go over here and say, oh, Matt Gaetz is awful because he was speaking behind the scenes with Jeffries, right? With Hakeem Jeffries. Oh, he's talking with Hakeem Jeffries, so that must mean that he's brokering some sort of backroom deal. Meanwhile, interestingly enough, the man that you are defending says that he speaks with Hakeem Jeffries every week, and not only that, but lets him know every move that he's making so that he's not blindsided by his next moves as Speaker of the House. So, something's not adding up. Is it? Are you truly upset? Do you really think that it's a connection to Hakeem Jeffries that's the problem here? Because if it was, you would be more upset with Kevin McCarthy than you would be of Matt Gaetz. Now, I will say this. There is a clip that I'm going to play later that I think will explain why you're hearing a lot of conservatives say this. And I do think that, you know, with Mark Levin, there is a conservative in there somewhere. I'm not doubting for a second that Mark Levin is a true conservative. I just think that there is a specific reason why he's saying these things. But, you know, not to kind of just cherry pick an example and make it seem like, you know, just because Mark Levin is defending Kevin McCarthy, that he's the only right-winger doing it. You know, just to show you guys that I'm not blowing this out of proportion, Ben Shapiro himself also was running defense for the man. Being, you know, he was kind of like melting down over here on his stream, so much so that he got lots of dislikes on this video, and pretty much the entire chat while the episode was premiering was basically like, no, Ben Shapiro, what are you doing? And calling him a rhino and a moderate. But this is what Ben Shapiro said to kick off his show. This episode is entitled McCarthy Out as Speaker.
So what if I told you that the GOP had pretty much every systemic advantage going into 2024?
Yo, if there was such a thing as a right-wing meltdown, this is what it would be.
Deeply unpopular president of the United States, with approval ratings in the high 30s, low 40s. A president of the United States with approval ratings on the economy in the 30s or 20s. What if I told you that the GOP had an economic edge on the issues that is their biggest since 1991? Well, what if I told you that going into the election, there was a very solid shot that Joe Biden's economic policies were going to drive America directly into a recession? Well, all of those things are true. All of those things are true. And yet, somehow, Republicans have come up with a brand new strategy. This strategy is to join in Idiocracy, it's a movie from the 2000s, join in the Idiocracy show Ow My Balls. This is their actual strategy, is just to kick themselves over and over in the balls until they win. I cannot see any other strategy here. I don't know why it's happening. It makes no sense to me. It is incredibly frustrating because I would like to see Joe Biden not be president of the United States. I'd like to see Democrats not make policy for the United States. I'd like Chuck Schumer not to be the Senate Majority Leader. And yet,
also, the idea that this is going to lead to Joe Biden becoming president of the United States or Chuck Schumer becoming the leader of the Senate is pretty ludicrous. But I think that Ben Shapiro is also being a little bit disingenuous here as well, because this is not a strategy to sort of just like kick yourself until you win. That's not the strategy that Matt Gaetz and his friends are trying to do. What they see is Kevin McCarthy, running out there, maybe like tying the shoelaces of a couple of his teammates together so that the trip and fall, they're not able to accomplish their goals. And then he goes over, maybe like blocks a shot or something and then declares himself the hero. That's kind of more of what Matt Gaetz, Matt Gaetz views Kevin McCarthy's role to be in the GOP, not as, the team leading scorer on the team, right? Who is really saving your team and getting your team all of these W's, taking him out of the game, during like extra time when the game is tied. That's not what Matt Gaetz is trying to do. He sees McCarthy as a liability, not as an asset. So I think that that's one thing that Ben Shapiro is kind of missing with this analysis here.
Since Republican victory in 2016, Republicans have lost something like 11 governorships. Republicans have lost something like 20 plus House seats. Republicans have moved from a majority to a minority in the Senate, all in the face of wildly unpopular Democrat policies. The Democratic Party has moved to the radical left. They continue to mirror all the policies of the radical left. The American people don't like them on any of the issues, and yet Democrats keep getting elected. And so the question becomes, why? Why would that be? Well, maybe the reason for that is because Republicans are strategically inept. Maybe it is because Republicans have essentially decided that protest votes are more important than actual votes.
That's not true. I've explained this during a stream that I did, I think maybe like a month or two ago. The problem is that the bar for like the bar that Republicans set for a candidate in order to win, for them to like actually vote for them, the bar is higher for Republicans than for Democrats, right? Republican voters have standards to a degree, and they're like, we're only going to vote for a candidate if they are this good, right? But then Democrats are like, oh, we don't care. We will vote for someone who literally can't even speak. We will vote for someone who can't even speak, can't even read, and can't even comprehend what is being said to him verbally. We'll vote for him just because his shirt is blue, just because he's on the right team. And we literally saw that. We saw that play out with Fetterman versus Oz, because Oz was by no means a perfect candidate, and Donald Trump kind of ended up basically anointing the head of a moderate rhino with oil, because he said nicer things about Trump than the conservative who was running against him in the primary. And that's why he ended up losing, because he wasn't conservative enough. It wasn't that Fetterman was a better candidate. It wasn't that Fetterman would make a better representative. It's just that Oz was not good enough. And despite Fetterman being infinitely worse than Oz, that didn't matter. What mattered was that he was a Democrat. That's all that you need. So this idea that it's because Republicans are inept, no, it's because Republican voters have standards and Democrat voters do not. That's the only difference.
Maybe they've decided that dousing themselves in gasoline and setting a match is probably the best strategy. I don't know what strategy for, other than maybe feeling good for a brief moment in time, because if we show frustration to our leadership class, then for sure we'll get a new leadership class. And then somebody else enters. We're like, wait, hold on. The incentive structure is exactly the same. And Thomas Sowell says very frequently with regard to politics that people's big mistake when it comes to politics is believing that the problem with the politicians is the politicians rather than the incentive structure that creates the politicians. And that is exactly correct. Republicans have now replaced, in the last few years, Paul Ryan as Speaker of the House, John Boehner as Speaker of the House, and now Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House. What has changed? Seriously, what has changed? What magical new things have happened from the replacement of any of these people as Speaker of the House? Now, I was not a Boehner fan. I didn't want Boehner to be Speaker of the House. I thought he was far too conciliatory toward Barack Obama. I thought Paul Ryan was fine. I thought Kevin McCarthy was fine. But apparently, we tend to be operating under the wild delusion that if we simply replace one speaker with another speaker and leave the incentive structure exactly the same, then everything will be, better.
But the incentives, the problem is that is not about changing the incentives. It's about keeping the incentives the same. The incentives were for Kevin McCarthy is like, hey, agree to this, and you get to be the Speaker of the House. And the problem is that he did not abide by those promises. So the incentives aren't changing. Ben Shapiro is right about that. But we're having someone in the seat who is going to honor the incentives, honor the concessions that he's going to have to make in order to become the Speaker of the House is what's going to change things. It's not the promises that are changing. It is the integrity in keeping those promises that is changing, hopefully, with the next Speaker of the House. So that was Ben Shapiro's attack on this. And lastly, we have Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, that's one thing, too. Mark Levin was like, oh, well, Marjorie Taylor Greene's voted in support of Kevin McCarthy. So what's up with that, huh? Well, no, it's not conservatism. It's not conservatism at all. But it is the fact that she, well, let's not start with Marjorie Taylor Greene, because, look, let's be honest. Marjorie Taylor Greene, when she voted to not oust Kevin McCarthy, that was not a decision that she made. It is a decision that Donald Trump made. Donald Trump made a post. Donald Trump made a post on Truth Social where he said, why is it the Republicans are always fighting among themselves? Why aren't they fighting the radical left Democrats who are destroying our country? Very strongly signaling that he did not want Kevin McCarthy to be removed from the Speaker of the House position. Now, what does this have to do with Marjorie Taylor Greene? Well, if you guys remember, the last time that people were voting on who would be the Speaker of the House, remember what Marjorie Taylor Greene did? She literally went and called Donald Trump to get marching orders on what she should do next, and then handed the phone with Donald Trump on the line to other people to try to convince them all to go in lockstep with Donald Trump as well. So I know people view Marjorie Taylor Greene as this like far right conspiracy theorist. Well, she kind of is. But also they take this to mean that she's extremely principled and that she will only vote in support, the far right agenda. That's not true. That's not true at all, because here she is directly just taking marching orders, doing whatever it is that Donald Trump tells her to do. Now, all of this to say is, does this mean that there are no more conservatives anymore, right? Does this mean that we can't listen to any more right-wing talk show hosts or anything like that? No, it doesn't. This right here, Steve Deace on his show today did a really good job of explaining what exactly has happened to all this, talk radio media, all of these pundits that you see on the right wing, all of these folks that you're seeing on, even Fox News, right? Such as Brian Kilmeade and Laura Ingraham and, and other people in politics like Meghan McCain. This sort of explains why you're seeing a lot of people in conservative right-wing media go to bat for Kevin McCarthy, because make no mistake, right? All these people who have signed all these deals with Westwood One and Cumulus and iHeartRadio, which are like some of the major syndication radio networks on talk radio, all these hosts are beholden to them. They kind of have to say whatever they want them to say to a degree, or they could get kicked off of the network. And Steve Deace, told a really good story that kind of, explains how exactly this happened, because Salem Radio Network did the exact same thing.
Everybody's on tilt right now.
Good.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that's the mood right now.
Because your comfort is what all got us here.
Here is here's something that I received this morning from another name many of you would know, who had read some of the things I've been posting this morning on Twitter. I'm just going to share with you these texts without naming the person, because this is a summary. There's more. This pretty much summarizes what my inbox, or not my inbox, what my private text messages with a lot of people you would know have looked like here in the last 12 hours. Quote, ultimately, Gates is a nihilistic figure. This is vanity nihilism, but McCarthy obviously sucks too.
Hear, hear.
I mean, that pretty much summarizes it. That pretty much summarizes the mountain of text about this over the last 12 hours I have received. One more piece of context. The first national network I ever worked for was the Salem Radio Network. They tried to, worked with, I should say, because I've not been anybody's employee for 12 and a half years. But the first major national network that signed me to a show was the Salem Radio Network. Great people. I greatly enjoyed them. Whenever you're giving opinions, and particularly giving opinions like I do, there will be times it can get contentious and things of that nature. But, when CRTV decided to make us exclusive to them, we didn't burn any bridges. Nobody was angry at Salem. They were pretty good to us. Everything paid us on time. And for the most part, no one got in our way. I said what I wanted to say. We didn't have a bunch of bitch and gripe sessions about Salem Radio, sitting here off the air most nights, did we?
No.
We left on good terms. They did a great job during PVOD for Nefarious. They really sold it, and their audience really, killed it for us, and we appreciate that. And I worked with people that I'm definitely to the right of. Hugh Hewitt, by the way, was very sweet to me, but I'm definitely to the right of Hugh Hewitt. I'm definitely to the right of Michael Medved, who's no longer in the network, but he was back then, And one of the things that Salem was very tied in with the Republican Party. And so, when I first came on board the network, they brought all of the show hosts out to this 5-star hotel on the beach in Santa Monica for a debrief and to meet all the corporate VPs and to sell our shows. But one of the things they had us do is, and one of the first things we did in the morning is we had to sit down, and Sean Spicer, who was then the spokesman for the RNC under Reince Priebus, we were to get a briefing from Sean Spicer about how to shill for the Republican Party. I just got up and walked out. I was like, I'm not doing this. You guys, I'm not an employee, and I do my own show. You decide if you want it or not, but I'm not.
Good.
And then, I don't know if it was cosmic or coincidental, but when we all got limo rides to the airport, the next morning when the event was over, you got partnered with somebody. Take a guess who I got partnered with.
I remember.
Sean Spicer. That has to be one of the quietest limo rides in Santa Monica history.
Hey, dude.
We were both on the absolute edges of the back seat, as far away from each other as we could get, thumbing through our phones like we weren't paying, like we were not acknowledging the other person was there. Okay. After that, they wanted all of the show hosts to do weekly kind of downloads with Kevin McCarthy. I think he was.
Yeah, I've got the email pulled up right here.
Yo, you still have the email?
2017. Do you want me to read this to you?
Yeah, read it. Go ahead, read it. Yeah.
Okay. And this was after we left Salem. Okay.
Yeah.
And I still got these emails. And you did too, I think. To Salem hosts, producers, new media contacts, NNPA, editorial board, Republican leaders have introduced the American Health Care Act. This bill, which is one piece of the broader effort to replace Obamacare, is the first step in providing Americans a better alternative, blah, blah, blah. Salem has scheduled a conference call with House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy and Ways and Means Chairman Kevin Brady to help us better understand the bill, the game plan, and the stakes. That was back in March of 2017.
Well, clearly you made a mistake in your judgment, Steve, because healthcare turned out so well with his leadership.
That worked well. In the next election, we lost 40 seats, and the number one issue in the exit polling was healthcare. Anyway, but we were expected to do weekly downloads with Kevin McCarthy to get talking points that we as hosts at Salem were to feed to you in the audience.
Yeah, that's what that means by better understand the bill.
Yes, to tell you, to relay to you from on high what Team GOP says you're supposed to think. So the first time we got one of these requests, I sent you to the call, and I said, you tell me if there's anything there worthy of listening to, and if there's not, I'm just going to tell them I'm just never going to show up, and if they ask me, it's not worth my time. So I sent you to the very first one. Was there anything there worthy of listening to?
There was not.
No, just I could have gotten that off of any Fox News show, anybody else. So I never did one of these things. I've been involved in a lot of primaries around the country, including my own state. I'm one of the reasons why in 2010, Iowa set the all-time record in the Republican Party for most contested primaries against incumbents.
Right, and the Steve Deace show is a great show. I could listen to the show all day, to be honest. But the point is, just to wrap things up, because I know that this stream, I know that this video has been a little bit long. I do kind of want to wrap things up here, but the point is this, right? You could listen to, your favorite pundits, whatever. If you grew up like me listening to Mark Levin, same as I grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh, and also kind of to a lesser degree Sean Hannity, there's nothing wrong with continuing to listen to these figures. But I think it's important to maybe pay attention to who these hosts might be beholden to. Who are these people working for? Mark Levin has a show that is syndicated across like iHeartRadio, Westwood One, those networks. Those are big companies. They are probably getting big money, and they are probably getting contacted by the GOP too to be like, hey, get your hosts to push our party line, right? Look at other shows like all of the Salem Radio Network programs, like Hugh Hewitt and all of the people who are on that network. They clearly, right, based on that video, based on emails that are still being sent out to this day, are literally getting marching orders from the GOP telling them which messages to push. Ben Shapiro, he also, by the way, if you're like, oh, Ben Shapiro, he's completely independent. No, he's not completely independent, because his show is getting syndicated all across the radio waves as well. Now, of course, there are other people like Steve Deace who their show is also syndicated on some networks, but it's syndicated on a few networks. It's not one of like the major networks, really. You can't just like drive cross country and just listen to Steve Deace all day. It's just not possible. So, even though Ben Shapiro is viewed as this great big independent right-wing pundit, his show is, very well known across the nation. It's being syndicated all over talk radio. And I think that the Daily Wire is slowly becoming basically a syndicated network of podcasts that become talk radio shows, which is actually kind of an interesting move on their part strategically. And Mark Levin, he's not just on Westwood One. Mark Levin isn't just on Westwood One in iHeartRadio, by the way. He's also on Fox News, which also has some very deep ties to the GOP. So you can listen to these people, but I would say just be mindful, right, of the connections that they might hold. Don't believe something just because they say they're a conservative, right? Just because you're hearing it from the mouths of someone who says that they're conservative. Think for yourself and don't take all of the opinions in of someone just because you're listening to them. Also, if you can, listen to people who are not getting, paid by these big old companies or these special interests, but they're rather working for themselves. And the only people that they're beholden to are the people listening to them. So like, for example, one person that I listen to a lot of is Tim Pool. He works for himself. He's not taking, big money from all these companies, right? Like Cumulus Radio and all of these networks, right? And he's not taking marketing orders from the GOP either, right? The only money that he gets is basically from members and supporters of his show. Viewers like you, right? That's the best way to be, I think, as a host. And that's the best, I think that leads to the best commentary, to be honest, right? It's better, I think, to be led by the viewers. If I had to choose between someone who said things that the viewers wanted them to say and things that were told to them from on high, right, from a certain political party, I would take the person who was going to err on the side of saying whatever the people want to hear over that, to be honest. Well, I don't think that's what a lot of independent people do, because if you do that, that kind of ends up being cyclical, and then shows end up dying that way pretty easily. And still, I think that it's just very important, as this is a very historical moment in American history, to just, consider that there are going to be some people in the GOP trying to pull strings very tightly in order to get certain mouthpieces to say certain things. This doesn't mean that the people who are saying these things are not true conservatives. It doesn't mean that they've thrown all of their principles to the wayside. But it's very possible that people could be going over to these hosts and being like, hey, if you don't support Kevin McCarthy, we're going to pull your program from, half of the country, right? From half of the talk radio stations across the country. It's very possible that this is something that's being said. Now, we don't know that for sure, right? But I would not be shocked if that were the case for at least some of these folks who are saying these things. But that's pretty much all I got You know, I'm not here to talk about who should be the next Speaker of the House. Right? That is, I think, a topic for another day. This has already been a very beefy and very hefty video, right? An extremely long stream. So all that is stuff that I'll talk about in the future. But I think this is just something that's very important to get out there and make sure that people know that, you know, there are some people out here who are saying things that they say that they're conservatives and they're pulling and rooting for, you know, business as usual. They don't want things to change. And it's unfortunate because things do need to change. And, you know, we need a little bit more than just this incremental change, this step-by-step change. We need change where if we can go farther, right, with getting closer to a conservative-led, you know, small government style of leadership, then we should do that. We should move as far as we can. We don't need to take itty-bitty steps, right? We can make some more steps further, and hopefully that's what this ends up being. But I definitely would love to hear your guys' comments. You know, I would like to hear your guys' opinions in the comments below about this state of affairs. What you think of the whole situation, and what you think about the potential that you know, the GOP and special interests have captured some of these very prominent talk radio hosts. But I mean, to be honest, that's pretty much all that I got. So thanks for tuning in. I will see you guys in another stream. I'll see if I can stream tomorrow. I know this is not my usual stream. I just decided to talk about this one topic and then keep it pushing. Got other things I'm trying to do tonight. But that's all I got, y'all. Peace out.
Picasso, oops, Picasso, you made my heart grow. A lesson I learned from the seed is it starts slow. Trust me, you gon' see the tree if you look close. Don't you know having faith is a substance of things that you don't see? But trust me, you gon' see the fruits of your labor. Trust in the King and my focus on laser. Walking in purpose, I'm blessing on favor. I tried to go fall in love with the paper. Till you show me love that will never that you cater. Tried to move fast and regretted it later. As long as I'm focused on you and your truth, I know I'll get the fruits of my labor. They said if you ain't stuck at guap, then you ace it. They said my time's wasted if I ain't chasing a cash. I said the first gon' be last. You got everything you need right up in the kingdom, that's facts. I can teach you how to serve like that. Even the king will show love from the front to the back. It don't matter what you might lack. From the homeless on streets to the ones who got everything that you have. No, that will never last though. You wrapped your arms around me like a lasso. You went and painted the picture Picasso. Oops, Picasso, you made my heart grow. A lesson I learned from the seed is it starts slow. Trust me, you gon' see the tree if you look close. Don't you know having faith is a substance of things that you don't see? But trust me, you gon' see the fruits of your labor. Trust in the King and my focus on laser. Walking in purpose, I'm blessing on favor. I tried to go fall in love with the paper. Till you show me love that will never